Wells Fargo is the largest US bank by market cap and focuses on retail and corporate lending as well as transactional banking.
Yeah, we talk about this one because it's one that I own personally, so I sort of cheat by putting it on the list every time to see what our guests think about it. But it's really perhaps the cleanest of the big US banks, in the sense that it has the least history of being involved in active proprietary trading and suffered the least during the financial crisis.
Market cap here of $236.6 billion US dollars, trades on a PE of 11.5, dividend yield of 3.2%. Do you hold Wells Fargo?
I don't. I follow it quite closely. It's famously the one bank. There are two particular banks, but this is one of them liked by Berkshire Hathaway, the famous Warren Buffett, and he owns quite a big slug of this bank. And Paul, quite right, they avoided most of the crisis, and they pride themselves in being profitable for as far back as I could see, sort of the 60s, the mid-60s. They've been profitable every year. It is fairly conservative, well-run. They stay away from investment banking and this very complicated stuff. So a solid transactional bank and keyed into the American economy, and really they go up and down with the American economy without all that fancy stuff. As you can see from the valuation, fairly cheap. A good dividend yield, much higher than what you can get on US bonds, and a moderate PE. On par with some of our South African banks. First Rand is most probably the close in terms of rating. So here you can buy into a US business, US cost of capital at a similar valuation to some of our banks.
Paul, did you follow Buffett into the fray on Wells Fargo?
I can't remember. I mean, we bought them because I liked the fact that they were one of the few US banks that are prepared to open an account for a South African. So if you're interested in having a US bank account, you can actually walk into a bank branch of Wells Fargo when you're in the US and present your South African proof of residence and your ID and open an account with them.
Not a bad option.
Interesting experience though. I mean, even though they're the best and even though they focused on retail banking, the online banking experience on their site isn't actually all that good.
And you would expect them to be leading the charge.
Yeah, you get
internet.
a Visa card, and that's nice, and that's what I also wanted, you know, so you can spend it here or there. And obviously, you've got to put some money in the account. That's quite a big challenge. But once it's in there, it's actually quite hard to get out as well. You can't do foreign EFTs. You can't even do EFTs between US accounts.
Rowan, you wanted to come in here?
So it's good value, and I think what's important to recognize is low interest rates are actually hurting these stocks. So an upward interest rate environment is bad for stocks in general, but these banks are actually a little bit of an anomaly, because I actually think the increase in interest rates will actually improve their lending margin and have quite a marked benefit and upside for these banks. So I quite like them, very defensive for the current environment.
Let's call it, Paul. Hot or
Well,
not?
this thing with low interest rates is a concern, because it really does look as though we're going to have low interest rates for a long time. Let's have a look at the share chart, because you'll see that in the last period here, this is where it sort of sagged a bit, and that's when Janet Yellen started saying, because remember, in late 2015, we had the rates increase from the Fed. Since then, they've downplayed the opportunity to increase rates further. So the sense that they are not normalizing rates and that it's going to be tough for banks remains present, and they're going to have to cut costs further, and I don't know that they're all that comfortable doing that.
So now
yet.
that we've digested the graph, let's call this a stock. Hot or not, Rowan?
Hot on this one.
Hot or not, Paul?
Yeah, I'm of the view that in the end it will do well, and so we'll be good. I'm with Lance on this one. We're going to go hot on it and say that if you're going to be anywhere in the global big players, that's where you've got to be.
And again, disclosure is that Paul does own Wells Fargo.
And quite a lot of our clients own it too.